The following is a production of cprundown.com. The views and opinions expressed by the host of this podcast are those of the individual and not of any affiliated companies. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Rundown on Fun, a weekly podcast covering the Cedar Fair Entertainment Company, the amusement industry, and the business of fun. Here are your hosts, Karsten Anderson, Evan Schultz, and Kyle Hu.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Rundown on Fun, a weekly podcast where we cover Cedar Fair, Cedar Point, and everything to do with fun. And right at the top, before we get into anything else, we just wanted to preface this show by saying the Ohio area is getting battered by a brutal storm right now. So if we drop out or anybody loses power, at least you're aware of what happened. We won't hold on that too long. But joining us this week is Michael Graham from the Gravity Group. So we're going to go ahead and kind of interview him, talk to him, and just have a fun conversation. So,
absolutely.
Michael, first of all, welcome to the show.
Yes, well, thanks. It's great to be on here. I'm a fellow Ohioan, so I have spent half my time up by Cedar Point and half of my time down at Kings Island in my life. So
awesome.
I am fair weather Ohio sports fan and a dedicated amusement park fan of Ohio.
Are you Browns or are you Bengals?
Yes. Fair weather means whoever's winning.
So Bengals.
So right now, go Joe Burrow.
Yeah, yeah.
Actually, my team's FC Cincinnati, which is doing amazing. My second team's a Crew, so they're doing pretty good too. But yeah, this is the year of FC Cincinnati right now. So
you're just fans of two bitter rivals.
Hey, I don't have the black and yellow.
That is good. That is true.
For all those people in Pittsburgh, no shout out to you.
Yeah. Well, we don't cover Kennywood, so it's okay.
Yeah, right.
All right.
What if they were Cedar Fair Park, though? Would you have to cover them?
We probably would.
Ooh, deep.
Yeah, unfortunately. They kind of be our little
child,
but
down on our list, though.
Yeah. It says it right there
I
at the
gotta
top
say,
of the show.
I do love Kennywood, even though they sport the yellow and black, but that's okay.
Of course.
That's some good coasters there.
All right. So to start things off, Michael, could you tell us first a little bit about yourself, and then second, what your role is at Gravity Group?
Yeah, a little bit about myself. I am a father of 3 girls, and been married for quite a few years. My eldest daughter's 13, got a middle daughter of 10, and a youngest daughter of 8. All of which can now ride all the 54-inch height requirement rides at Kings Island. So, awesome. It's a good time now. It's we kind of graduated from, having zoo passes to, Kings Island passes for the last few years. And I live in Cincinnati area. I eat plenty of Skyline chili and other Cincinnati-style chilies.
Good man.
That could be a different podcast altogether as well.
Good, yeah.
But so I grew up in Elyria, Ohio, which is halfway between Cedar Point and Cleveland. So we went to Cedar Point all the time growing up, and that was certainly one of the key factors of me, having a passion for the product of the roller coaster as well as for just amusement parks and theme parks as well.
That's cool.
My current title and my title for the last 20 years has been one of the owners of the Gravity Group. I was one of the founders and an engineer at the Gravity Group. We come up with different titles because technically on paper, the business side of things, the Gravity Group is an LLC, which is a limited liability company. And the people who run that are called member managers, which pretty much means nothing. So usually we have more of a description. We just say engineer and principal or engineer and owner or something like that. So usually that's kind of a little bit more clear from a communication point of view of what we're trying to say there. So yeah, Corey Kiepert, Chad Miller, Larry Bill, and I founded the Gravity Group back in 2002. So we celebrated our 20th anniversary last year. And it's kind of mind-boggling because we were all the engineers at Custom Coasters, and after we were let go and the company went bankrupt, we were like, hey, what do we do? And so we're like, well, we like doing coasters. That's why we were here. And
Nice.
so we kind of
Is that why the headquarters and everything is kind of like down south in Ohio and not like, up here in northern Ohio, like the Elyria area and stuff?
Yes, exactly. So
Okay.
you have it goes back to Charlie Dinn. Charlie Dinn was the main builder of the Beast at Kings Island, and he had a strong relationship at the time with all the Kiko Entertainment or Kings Entertainment Corporation. So he did a lot of work with them before and after he was with Kings Island. So after he built the Beast, he went and founded Dinn Corp. So Dinn Corp worked with Kurt Summers Engineering here in Cincinnati, and I believe Kurt Summers was brought into Kings Island, particularly for Eiffel Tower and other structural things. So they did a lot of stuff that was not coaster related. In fact, their coaster world was actually kind of small compared to all the stuff they did. But that's where Larry Bill got his start. And then in 1991, if I'm not mistaken, our big solid wood structure of the Main Street was built at Cedar Point. And shortly thereafter, Dinn Corp closed, and actually Curtis Summers, I believe, died that year. So that's when that Kurt Summers, kind of went a separate way, or that kind of went under. And it was about that time when Custom Coasters was being started by Charlie's daughter Denise. It was very much a family company. Denise's husband Randy at the time, and her mother June, Charlie's wife, they were kind of the core of Custom Coasters, and then they had our engineering team to help them out essentially. So Custom Coasters went from 92 to 2002. So Dinn Corp was 10 years and Custom Coasters was 10 years, and then we've doubled that. So that's I guess a good thing.
Yeah,
I'd say
sure.
so. And you're off to a pretty heck of a start with with some of the products you guys have put out.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. And that gravity goop.
I was going to say, what was the first coaster that was like, this is a gravity group roller coaster? Like what?
Hades.
Hades.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hades was certainly
go
our
big or go
first
home, huh?
What's that?
Go big or go home, huh?
Pretty much. Well, it was Hades and then Voyage, so it's like okay.
Yeah, you're off to a roll and start there.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of follow up, those in some regards because they had so much, land or height and budget and everything else to make it work. So, at the beginning, we just worked as an engineering company. We worked directly with the parks. What we found when we were helping Cliffs Amusement Park finish up New Mexico Rattler, because it was right in the middle of that project when Custom Coasters went bankrupt. So the park had a half-built coaster, and that's a pretty lousy situation to be in. They obviously had our phone numbers and stuff, so we helped them out on the engineering side of things. And what they did is they just hired all the crew that was there, who no longer had a job through Custom Coasters. So they had all the same people really getting the ride done, and so that crew was kind of the core group that we used for a lot of the early Custom Coasters projects. We still use some of those guys today.
Awesome.
So,
awesome.
So, for a while there, we were working, for the parks. And then a little while later, we set up Gravity Craft Corporation, which handled more of the product turnkey supply. So Gronal and Twister, I believe, was the first turnkey product that we put out. That obviously included the Timberliner trains in 2011, along with Quasi.
Cool.
Good stuff.
All right. So our next question is, can you talk about some of the projects you've done for Cedar Fair in the past couple of years? Obviously, we have the Beast and the Racer both at Kings Island, and then Grizzly at Kings Dominion this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So COVID was a tough year for everybody. And what fortunately happened right before COVID is we developed our engineered pre-cut track. A lot of you guys have heard about that. Obviously, we don't have it at Cedar Point yet. It wasn't really a big
yet.
just a statement. Yes, I would love to put it on Blue Streak, no question about it. One of the first rides I thought of when we started developing it. But in due time, potentially, everybody, all parks have their own maintenance plans. So In 2019, we installed our first engineered pre-cut track at Kentucky Flyer. So we did a couple test sections on that ride, and it was kind of that was the leapfrog, the litmus test, and we're like, wow, this is going to be really really awesome. So we pitched that to Kings Island, and it really worked out well because we had a crew over in France working on one of the earlier years of Tenard de Zeus. We did obviously a multi-year project over there. And we were hoping to get some engineered pre-cut track at Kings Island here. This was, and so, but that's when COVID hit. So the world shuts down, and we're like, oh crap, what do we do? You know, we're, as much as I would love to say we were an essential business, it's hard to qualify that. You know, we were like mental health, like, you know, coasters are essential for, you know, people.
I mean, I think our listeners would agree with that. So
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
So, but it turns out that, you know, we were able to, you know, keep stuff rolling. And, you know, as the stuff developed, we're like, okay, it looks like engineered pre-cut track's going to work on Racer really well. And, you know, at the time we couldn't travel. And, you know, fortunately, you know, Kings Island was on the way home for many of us. You know, a lot of us, we were working from home as well. So, you know, we were able to do that project. If you look at some of the videos that have been published about the, you know, about the engineer pre-cut track, you can see that, you know, they're wearing their masks and stuff like that in the Racer videos. So it worked out well. It was, you know, if you haven't been down to Racer, basically 660 feet of the Racer was redone in 2021. The outbound section of the red and the blue side, about 330 feet on each side. And it really was, you know, pretty eye-opening, I think, to everybody. We're like, wow, this can be a really smooth wooden coaster. You can tell just from the feel of it that it's not going to be getting rough anytime soon. And it just creates a new experience. In this case, we were able to modify the profile a little bit to add some airtime that, you know, John Allen might have added if he had the tools that we had today. And just really turned out as a really great project. So we were really happy with that. Kings Island was happy with that. And so then, you know, for 2022, we did a big section of Beast, or a couple sections of Beast. I believe total, I think our section was about 1,200 feet of track. We worked with the park with some additional traditional tracking, giving them some numbers and stuff for a total of about 2,000 of the 7,400 feet of track on Beast. So there was no doubt it was a beast of a project. If you want to consider that a pun, you can. If you don't, that's fine too. My kids don't like my dad jokes. Just putting that out there. So whenever I tell a dad joke, they I don't know, some show they were watching, they there was like something about elbow swords, and there's some type of like swords that came out of the elbows. And so, like, every time I do a dad joke, they come and, you know, elbow me in the belly and the elbow sword. It's like, okay, whatever.
Every time you say one, you're like, you're bracing for it. Right?
Where's it at? Looking behind your back.
Yeah. So I'm fully expecting one of our 40,000 listeners to come and give me an elbow sword sometime. See him at a park or something.
Yeah, you never know. You never know.
Yeah. So on the Beast, we did.
There's some crazy enthusiasts out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, actually, I don't really invite that. Just maybe I should make it clear.
Just a disclaimer.
Yeah. So back to the Beast. Yeah, we did the first drop and the first curve to the left. They had a lot of issues with maintenance on that ride over the years, as you might expect. You know, it was a pretty foundationally different ride design than had been ever done before, and that was definitely something that. You know, Al Collins and Jeff Gramke and Charlie Dinn, you know, wanted to create this new ride idea. You know, you look at the rides at the time. I believe Screaming Eagle was the last John Allen, you know, and right before that was a lot of the Cedar Fair racing coasters, and you know, that's the style of wood coaster at the time of the Beast. So you have this thing that stays on the ground. It's kind of like the wood coaster answer to the mine train, and it's like, whoa, what is that? It was, very, very different at the time, and very foundational. So, when we were working with it, there was definitely some areas that, just needed some modern engineering touches to it. And so, yeah, the park did a little bit of work going into the first brake shed, on top of that, and then also coming out of the brake shed into the left, connector tunnel, as they call it. I like to call it a horseshoe tunnel, the one that's mostly underground. And then also the helix got a lot of work done on it, a lot of restructuring going into the helix both times. And we also capped that with engineered pre-cut track all the way around. So yeah, it was a huge project, and definitely something where it's just kind of leapfrog that into its next chapter of life. And you get, I think Cedar Fair and Kings Island in particular, you get kind of fatigued by the amount of wood coaster track that needs to be maintained every year.
Yeah.
And so, they were looking for a solution that's a longer term solution. And so it worked out really well. The little background of it, I guess this would be a good time to say. So, what is engineered pre-cut track? Basically, it's stronger, smarter use of wood. So instead of using the wood traditionally, typically laminates are laid for a wood coaster track horizontally. So think about a deck of cards. You can bend that deck of cards. However, if you have the deck of cards and you rotate them vertically, you can't bend them that way. So there's like one of the directions is strong and one of them is weak. And so what we did with the engineered pre-cut track, we have horizontal and vertical styles. The vertical style uses that strength, and so instead of bending it in the shape of the hills, you're actually cutting it with a computer-controlled machine. And so whatever shape we have in the computer, kind of think about a deck of cards. You can make a smile or a frown about that deck of cards, and it's super strong. So the track ends up being about 20 times stronger than the traditional track. And so what that does is, getting a little bit into the engineering side of things, the stronger you make things, the longer it lasts.
Right.
That's the easy answer. How long it lasts gets into all kinds of fatigue analysis and all kinds of other fun stuff that we don't need to get into. But if it's 20 times stronger, it's going to last way longer than any of us are alive, kind of things. So as far as the strength of the track goes, so awesome. we don't really expect any problems with it. There's always some rot that could happen or things like that are
right.
We do our best to make sure that the pressure treatment is as strong as possible and everything else. But yeah, it's fantastic. And then we also have we can also install it horizontally when we have some curves, and instead of being the same strength as traditional track, we have an adhesive that's called Gravity Goop, and we rebrand it. It's a special adhesive for us, for our track, and we laminate a certain number of those cards together. So if you take half of the stack of cards and glue them together, or 3/4 or something like that, you're going to have a completely different bending profile. You're not going to be able to shuffle those cards as well. And so we essentially glue part of the track together, and we get a track that's 8 times stronger than the original track. So It's still a really, really great product.
Yeah, still a huge improvement.
Yeah, so if you're riding the Beast Helix, that's an example of horizontal pre-cut track. That was where they actually, the parks define the scope for us and with us. We talk through what they want to do. In this case, they really just wanted the top 2 layers where the track contacts the train. They only really wanted to do that from a budgetary point of view. So we were able to do that. But if you ride the Helix now, it's like, wow, this is tracking so much nicer than it ever had. It's a really good push to the outside. You're not banging around. And so that's the engineering behind it. And then the product comes out as a really smooth shape. And it's also a lot easier to install. You're not actually cutting anything on the site, which, our guys are fantastic, our field install guys. But, they're also cutting, stuff that goes upside down 100 feet in the air. And so all that track traditionally has been cut with a circular saw. We have a lot of really cool tools to help create that shape for them that they use, but it still comes down to a human traditionally to install track. And so that's where, as we put the engineering and the math behind it, we're able to create these shapes that are just far cleaner and better than what our guys can typically install. And it makes them look great too, because they're like, oh yeah, there's so many less variables and unknowns and guesswork that they don't have to do anymore, because it's very much a puzzle piece Lego kind of system. So so that's a little ramble into engineer pre-cut track for you.
I'm sure our listeners definitely wanted to know what pre-cut track was, and how everything's like, because we, Evan and I and Kyle as well, like we were able to ride, the Beast a ton of times during coaster stock and also the Racer too. Like it was just night and day. It's so.
I mean, I ride Racer I was always gonna ride Beast a lot, but I ride Racer a heck of a lot more now than I ever used to.
Yeah.
And I was going to say with Beast too, I think a lot of people were concerned that doing all this track work on it was going to be like, oh, well, now it feels too smooth or too modern. And
no, I think it's got a perfect
maintains
mix.
That awesome out of control feeling that the Beast is known for. So,
well, it's interesting you bring that up, because that was a huge discussion and concern in our office.
Really?
We're like, we got to make sure that, the Beast still has a bite, but it's also rewritable.
Right.
So it was, we had a lot of discussions exactly where that perfect balance was. So I'm glad to hear that. It sounds like we hit it pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, I guess while it feels so much smoother, I don't feel a difference when it comes to that part of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
sure.
it's been an awesome upgrade.
Well, thanks. We like it too. I got a quick story about that. Is when I was dating my wife, this is probably close to 20 years ago now. We were at Kings Island, and she rode the Beast, and she's had some shoulder and back problems, and she's like, I'm not going to ride that again until something seriously happens to it. She's like, I just can't. Like, it hurt me.
Yeah.
And so so after we redid the Beast, she rode it, and she's like, it's been a long time, and this is wonderful that I can ride it again.
Yeah.
So a little personal
awesome.
touch there was really cool. And I took my 10-year-old on it right before we redid it. Obviously, I knew that we were going to be doing it. So we rode it in bench 6. So the second car, one of the axles, I was like, I got to have this before picture in my head. And she hadn't been on it at night. So she was, just 10 years old. She'd been on the Beast just a couple times before that. So we rode in bench 1, 2 before that, the second bench. So it was a Beast ride. And then I was like, we got to ride it at night. And it was the last night of the ride. So we're like, or last ride of the night. And so we jump in, and I was like, oh gosh, here comes row 6. So it was uncomfortable. Let's just say that.
Yeah.
And so then the first ride after we redid it, I'm like, we're going to bench 6. And it was like, wow, it was very welcoming to me, knowing that everybody, the general public, the enthusiasts, corporate maintenance, you don't have to have the enthusiast mindset of wheel seats are bad. Like, that is a huge change. Like, we know it very well about how bad a wheel seat is on that ride.
Yes.
And I feel so much better that the general public can ride it and enjoy it, that they don't need to know that inside scoop.
Yeah.
Right.
I know growing up, I always had this preconceived notion that it was just as simple as front to back. Like, front was smooth, back was bad.
Yes.
I don't know if you guys just heard that crack of thunder.
That was really loud.
Yeah, I did. I was wondering if that was thunder or not. Wow.
That just shook my apartment.
Wow.
And there was one earlier that actually made me jump too. Goodness. Anyway, so I had this preconceived notion that front was good, back was bad. So I wouldn't ride Beast and say, I have a cat too that always likes to make an appearance, just saying. She hasn't yet. She's probably hiding. So like row 17 is like my favorite row on the ride right now. I wouldn't touch it because I'm like, it's the back, it's the back, it's the back.
Yeah.
So just that speaks to this, that the general public not having that knowledge of, okay, well, row 1 is good, row 2 is going to be great, and row 3 is so that not having to worry about that is so huge for a park standpoint, because 99% of your guests are not us.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't believe that either until there was one day. I had just moved down here, so I moved down here in 2000, and I was over at Kings Island. It's like 15 minutes from my house, so it's kind of, I don't know. We'll go into that whole season pass thing maybe later, but so I was like, I've heard about this whole wheel seat. I don't believe it, so I was like, okay, I'm going to jump in the back seat, and I'm going to go one seat ahead and see if all these guys are just pulling my chain. So I rode in the back seat, and I was just like, whoa, that was horrible. Like I like, wow, that was so uncomfortable. And so I was like, I don't know if I can go like one seat forward again, because that was so bad. And so I did, and it was amazing. I was like, that was the best ride I've ever had on the Beast. That was so fun and enjoyable. And I'm just like, it can't be that big of a contrast. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Whoever hasn't on the podcast, go check it out. It's it can be a big deal.
Yeah,
obviously Magnum and Blue Streak also kind of have that.
Magnum
that
for I was going to say
as well.
Not necessarily just wooden coasters. Like I was going to bring up Magnum, Gemini, and even like the Aero Loopers. The front seat versus the back seat is night and day for as much of a change as those can be.
For sure.
All right. So moving on, we have one more question about your pre-cut track, and then I think that's it for that.
There's going to be a big crack of thunder here in a sec.
Yeah, we saw the flash.
Should we wait?
Maybe. Come on. There
it is. All right. So now that your engineered pre-cut track has appeared on multiple projects, and it's been an overall success from both fans of the industry and industry leaders, are there any plans to roll out more of it, or maybe do it to more of the Beast or anything like that you can even talk about?
Yeah, I can't really talk about any future projects. But yeah, Cedar Fair definitely likes the product. They feel that it's a really good solution for what they're doing. And I believe that it's been officially mentioned at Timbers Fest that we were up there doing some magic this past year as well. So yeah, that's at Timbers Fest. There was a Q&A about the work that was done on Wolverine Wildcat as well as Shivering Timbers. So we did a little bit of work up there this year. That was 4 of the the Grizzly, Racer, and the 2 in Michigan were the 4 of the 10 rides we did this year. And so yeah,
is
it was
that Cedar Fair or just
total
all over the world?
Yeah, there's just 4 Cedar Fair projects there.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, I would fully expect that trend to continue with Cedar Fair. So I can't tell you what projects or where or anything like that, but yeah, I see the engineer pre-cut track being a great solution for nearly every wood coaster could use it.
Absolutely,
in some way, shape, or form. So.
Yeah.
Cool.
Obviously, the Grizzly is another Cedar Fair project. Obviously, it was a huge project this year. That was one of the big transformation projects. Some of them, like Racer, their goal was to keep the shape as similar to the original as possible on the return run, just so that the amount of work was minimized. We did the section with the curve coming off the turnaround, and then the park installed half of the trip home. So we rebanked it. It's a pretty significant difference in banking on that curve compared to the blue side right now. It's kind of surprisingly different, and but yeah, it feels really great and smooth and everything else. So, but yeah, Grizzly was a fantastic project. Nothing but really rave reviews on that. One of the things I mentioned at Coaster Stock, which is an ever looping record or ever looping sample, is what about the rest of the ride?
Yeah.
So,
for sure.
But parks are doing this with their maintenance budget, which is really quite remarkable. Sometimes they get a little extra
Yeah.
But yeah, this is not capital improvements for the park. This is maintenance. So
Jeez.
Okay.
they're trying to get more because they know it's going farther.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit more than traditional track. It's just kind of using the same wood in a smarter way.
Right.
And,
That's crazy that you say that it comes out of the maintenance budget, because like, when you reprofile the beast like you did the first drop, and just the improvements made to the rest of the ride, and I'm sure Grizzly's the same way. It's like, man, you could almost call this a brand new coaster.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It was
I mean,
1,200 foot of track. Like that's the size of Sesame Place and Quasi and
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think, like, especially in Grizzly's Place, people weren't riding that ride, so now it's rideable. Now it's bringing people through the gates. So just for that to come out of the maintenance budget on its own, that's awesome. That's really
seeing
cool.
long lines at Racer is just awesome to see. It's like people want to ride this. People want to keep riding it because it's so enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Racer was
Especially
actually
red side.
Yeah, that was actually my most surprising ride of Coaster Stock. Obviously, I had not been on it yet this year, and that red side is just incredible.
Yeah, very much.
I concur.
I was say this isn't in our run sheet. Really quick. So you coming up with pre-cut track. Is there any coaster that you wish you could bring back, like that was wooden, to like maybe fix and resurrect or something like that?
You know what? I've been asked about what coaster I'd resurrect, but I haven't been asked that in light of EPT, or Engineer Pre-Cut Track, if you want to call it that. The cool kids call it EPT. Just kind of saying that. No, that was my Will Arnett.
We'll get it trending.
Yeah, there you go. We have our hashtags that are trending. Engineer Pre-Cut Track, Pre-Cut, and of course, Thou Shalt Not Steal. So steal with EEL. So
with an A.
Yeah.
There's another one.
Yep. Here comes the
So
thunder.
it makes for some good listening for the weather nerds, the coaster nerds. This is awesome.
Right. Good stuff.
I mean, this is a legit storm.
I was just saying, like, just thinking off the top of my head, just for Kings Island, I would have loved to see like Son of Beast kind of like stay, and then you guys like really like throw a ton like of all, obviously this new technology into it, and see like what could have came and been kind of thing, so.
A few come to mind. The Rye Aeroplane, I think, is something that's kind of high on my list. That would be pretty awesome. Cyclone Racer as well. And Thunder Road, I think, if we had EPT, I feel like, maybe that they would have been able to plan around that a little bit differently. Obviously, the water park was kind of a big challenge to kind of figure that out. But so I don't know. I feel like, there's been plenty of wood coasters out there that people are just like, we just can't keep up. So that's really where we feel like it's a great solution. It's also pretty seamless. The riders don't be like, oh wow, what is that other weird track that I just felt? It just feels like a smooth wood coaster that's thrilling. So it's very seamless from a explanation to the riders and general public. They're like, that's the ride I remember when I was little, or kind of that continuation of that thrill. So yeah.
All right. So before we jump off of the Beast, and I think you probably already answered this question, but did you have any issues or unforeseen obstacles or anything on that project that posed a challenge?
Whenever you are doing any type of upgrade to a wood coaster, which we're doing a lot of lately, it's like if you have ever worked on a house or on a car that's been 20 to 50 years old, there's always unknowns. And so houses are known to be money pits from a we pulled this off and then we discovered this and we discovered this. So every ride has that, and so we try to do our best to mitigate that up front. The Beast, I think, was more challenging because the structure that we added to the Helix was really challenging from a retaining the original center line for the most part, as well as restructuring it completely. So what was structured there was just a it was done a certain way to start, and then it was added to and added to and added to for the last 40 some years. And so it was like, okay, I guess we got to just take all this down to the ground, and then getting all the accurate information of where the concrete was and whether we needed to add more. And we're also this was the ride was operating until the end of haunt, so
Right.
we don't have a lot of time to do this. The amount of it was basically a small ride that we had to do from November through April, so it was a really tight project when you look at it from that point of view. So and obviously we reprofiled the first drop and reworked that left curve as well as all part of that. So it was a lot of structural construction as well, that you'll see on Grizzly and stuff like that, where you contrast this year on the Racer, there wasn't a significant change in the ride for most of that return run on Racer, compared to like what we did on the Racer and the Beast before that, because it was in decent shape. It was just needed to be smoother, and they wanted to just minimize the amount of effort. So we, whenever we see any type of ride, we're like, oh, let's reprofile, let's get it, really, amped up to, modern dynamics standards that we have. And sometimes we get to do that and sometimes we don't.
Cool.
All right. So
awesome stuff.
Yeah. Where do you see wooden coaster technology going in the next kind of 5 to 10 years?
I see the rework market staying very strong, particularly with our product. And then I do see that new rides coming back. I feel like it's the capital expenditures at parks are a bit more in that direction now for new roller coasters. So we definitely start to see that. I think there'll still be a continued trend on the smaller rides that we made famous. With Wooden Warrior, Rorosaurus, Oscar's Wacky Taxi, Wood Express, Timber. And so, those just hit a fantastic market and a review. It's one of those, like, I don't know anybody who's ridden Wooden Warrior that hasn't loved it.
That's a great little ride.
It, or, it's just like, no, everybody, like, jaded enthusiasts go there. They're like, okay, I heard all about this, yeah, it's a small coaster, but they still are like, that was still amazing. So
yeah, I really love that ride.
It's kind of like the highest, 5 out of 5 star ratings are some of those rides that are just so amazingly awesome for the entire family. I was fortunate enough to take my kids to media day at Kentucky Flyer, and my youngest was 4 years old and she was 42 inches, minimum of 40 inches on that ride. And I could just ride that ride all day long. I love that ride. So it was really, so I see that. And then also I feel like the Engineer Pre-Cut track has also opened up parks' minds to be like, okay, I can do a little bit more aggressive rides now with this too, because it's stronger and, more reliable, and knowing that it's going to be less maintenance as well. Combined with the Timberliners, from an engineering point of view, were hugely significant. The amount of track work that has been done on any ride that has Timberliners is just a tiny fraction from what it would have been with a different train. And that's due to jumping into some technical things. Is the way the force is distributed, we knew we had to make it pretty different. The wood track, whether it's Engineer Pre-Cut track or whatever, it's made out of wood, it's capped with steel. There's a certain amount of force that wood can take, and that's, basically just math. It's like, that's the number. And if you have a hammer that's close to that number, you're going to start mashing that steel into the wood. That's just the physics behind it. And so we said, we got to make sure that hammer is as small as possible for the loads of our train going into the track.
Right.
And so we were able to, one of the things that we did was we have a steerable wheel system. And so what that does is you have 2 side wheels or guide wheels, and instead of the whole train just kind of scraping around the turn, bouncing and carrying on. It actually steers, so all the wheels are in the line of the curve. So it's much more like a steel coaster. Think about Magnum or Corkscrew or something like that, where you can see the wheels are actually tracking with the shape of the track.
Yeah.
So the Timberliners do that, and number one, it follows the path better, but number two, it distributes that force over 2 points, so it's hitting 2 wheels instead of 1 wheel. And then it's also just the way the weight's distributed. It ends up being that force of that hammer onto the track is about reduced by a factor of 3. And so if I had a 10-pound hammer originally with the original trains, I've taken that down to a 3.5-pound hammer. So again, going back to the little bit of the fatigue, I know that track's going to last way longer. So the amount of wood that's been replaced is pretty much nil on anything running Timberliners from the force of the track. There's other factors that come into play as well, but and then you also vertically, we have a better distribution of force as well. So we're able to reduce that traditional wood coaster train that has 2 or 3 benches. About 2/3 of that weight's on the back axle, and so you have this pretty eccentric loading in the back, and so you have basically 2 plus part of another 2 passengers plus that weight is all on that back axle. So after we redistribute that, we are able to reduce our force vertically by 2. So again, we can reduce that force on the track and make the tracks last a lot longer. So that was one of the big impetuses for the Timberliners. We started doing wood coaster cars on Lost Coaster back at Custom Coasters. So that was the first wood coaster train to steer that had that wasn't flanged wheels. So you had a lot of the John Allen Jr. coasters that had flange wheel. So for all you geeks out there, people. So the Timberliners, and then engineer pre-cut tracks. So we don't stop innovating. So that's something that we do. So we love wood coasters. We're passionate about wood coasters, and so we see that there's always innovation to be had on in our world, and if we don't, then we might be left behind. But we feel that we have a constant flow of ideas. We have a pretty big team right now with everybody from shop crew to engineering to other staff, and also our field crews we got 3 field crews going right now. We're not right now, but in our prime building season. So yeah, we got a lot going on, and it's a busy time to be at Gravity Group.
Nice.
So going along with that, like with that innovation and the pre-cut track and all that good stuff, will there be like different or more dynamic inversions that we might see on wooden coasters? Because a lot of them are doing barrel rolls. Like that kind of seems like the hot topic, or some form of zero-G roll. Okay, son of beast.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got all kinds of inversions that we've talked about. There's really not anything we haven't talked about. So it's just a matter of finding the right customer that has the right goals.
So I guess the short answer is we can do anything B&M can do inversion wise.
Actually, no.
Along those lines.
What we have as a limitation is for right or for wrong, we're stuck with wood. And wood can only twist so much. You can actually twist more so with steel than you can with wood, particularly if it's flat plate or a round tube. So so something like say your 0G roll for Raptor, that track is really twisted. And so we can do a barrel roll, but it's got to be a little bit different. It's got to be a little bit gentler, I think. Maybe might be a way
more
to say
drawn
that.
out.
More drawn out,
stretched out.
So you look at our corkscrews and barrel rolls and stuff like that. They're a little old school looking. I think the corkscrew at Mount Olympus, it actually reminds me a little bit of like the for all the old people there, Batman Night Flight at Geauga Lake, those interlocking corkscrews, or even Rougarou. It's a little bit like that. So that whole B&M element that they kind of did at the ends of the rides. So I kind of feel like Hades is a little bit like that. However, Hades shoots through that. Like it's like you rocket out of that tunnel and you're upside down before you know it. So
Yeah. That's my favorite part of that ride.
Oh yeah.
Is exiting that tunnel and going through that inversion is so cool.
Yeah. I concur.
All right, so that's about it for questions. We have one more just about you and the company, and then the rest are just kind of your fun personal opinion. So, what has been your favorite project to work on out of all of the ones that you've done?
I have a few. It's kind of like picking a kid that's your favorite.
Your kids aren't listening. It's okay.
There's plenty. Yeah, there's plenty. I'll just say a couple memorable ones maybe. Working with Will Cook on the Voyage was really special. I kind of felt
I'll bet.
He had a lot of input. We had a lot of feedback and interaction with him, and he was just such a solid guy, and really miss him. But I kind of felt like it was like, I don't know. He was kind of, not to put him on a pedestal, but it kind of felt like Disney. Like it was kind of working with Walt Disney, where he had this vision, for this park. We were up on, I think on Zimbabwe's top. We were looking out over the area, and there was no Voyage.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were talking about, we were walking the site and that with him, and we were talking about where we were going to go with it. And it was just kind of like he was like, I'm going to do this thing. Like, we're going to have this ride. We used the quote in our advertisements for quite a few years. It was something about, this ride's really special, and I feel like it'll, stand the test of time.
Yeah.
And so that was his thought and vision the whole time. Was he was like, I want to make this a landmark. And it's what 18 years old, or 17 years old this year. And you hear about Hollywood Nights. Sorry for all you Coaster Mania people up there, but there's this thing called Hollywood Nights down in southern Indiana that's pretty special. And the Voyage night rides are pretty epic. So
absolutely,
if you haven't been on them, I remember riding it with a whole bunch of enthusiasts one year, and we get to the brake run. It's pitch black out. And there was dead silence. Everyone was just sitting there like, I can't believe what just happened.
And in the best way possible, you're sitting there like, oh my God. Like, what was that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That ride is special. Absolutely.
Then you got about a minute or two to process before you get to the station, then you start cheering again. So
I was say question on top of that is, so obviously Voyage is like long and everything. Did you guys literally just come up, like he's just like, hey, blank slate, we want this? Or did he say, hey, I want to do such and such long coaster, and kind of tell you guys, and then you guys, because I mean it just goes and goes and goes, and it's so good.
Or did he say, that's the park boundary, go to it?
Yeah, right.
Basically the length was a bit of a variable to start with. He knew he wanted something really big. At one time, he had the Beast record in his sights.
Wow.
There was even some discussion about having an inversion on the ride, even back in the day in 2006.
Wow.
That was decided against. But there's a few different designs. One of the things that kind of opened it up was actually Corey Kiepert, my business partner. He was like, we're going up over that big hill. So if you don't know about the ride, it goes out, but it goes towards this really big hill. It's 100 feet tall, just the ground. The ground goes up 100 feet from the station up to where the safety block is. And so as you go up to that, particularly if we go over it, down into where the spaghetti bowl is, that's another drop of 40 or 60 feet, I think. Mm-hmm. And then it comes back up. By that time, the amount of energy you have going over that hill is very little. And so as you on the safety block, you're 6 feet off the ground. And, it's like, wait, where did all this energy go? It's just because the ground's so high. And so we're like, it could be pretty lame up there because we just don't have hardly any energy to do anything with. And that's when we're like, hey, let's do some underground tunnels. And so we're sculpting the hills through that
Okay.
big hill. We're sculpting the coaster hills through that big hill. And then we're like, oh, this is something. We're going to make a whole bunch of these underground tunnels and really make this profile sing. So that was
Yeah.
one of the kind of the key breakthroughs there. At one time, I was actually going to go up that hill and then take a left towards Lake Rudolph Campground, back
Oh, wow.
where Mammoth and stuff is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the early designs had that.
Wow.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really
Interesting. Yeah.
cool. Well, I'm glad you went with the eventual winner because
Yeah.
sometimes I sit down and like, man, that might be my number one coaster. It's just so good.
Especially when you get
It's
to ride
okay
it
if it
trimless.
is.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay if it is. What was that, Carson?
I was gonna say, especially if you can ride it trimless, during Hollywood
Yes.
Nights that their
Yeah, it's
coaster
just
event, like they turn
unbelievable.
off the trims and you just ride it balls of the wall. So
Yeah,
that's
it's the best
good.
way of putting it.
Yeah.
All right, so we have. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to mention a little Holiday World story. So, this goes back, and I think I'm kind of jumping ahead here a little bit, but growing up at Cedar Point, we had Mean Streak and Blue Streak, and we also went over to Jog Lake. That was cool. Went to Kennywood, but I just didn't really have that fondness for wood coasters growing up. I had a friend in the Great Ohio Coaster Club, John Blakemore. He was like, Mike, you got to go down to Holiday World. This is the late 90s. So late 90s was the spawn of, not spawn, but a lot of the custom coasters rides were getting built then.
Yeah.
And he's like, you got to go ride Raven. I think it might change your life. I'm like, yeah, whatever, dude. He's like, no, you don't understand. Like, wood coasters are amazing. I'm like, yeah, sure they are. Whatever. And so I took a good, solo enthusiast trip down there. It was my birthday. I knew about the ride. I was like, okay, I know I got to make sure I get a night ride on it. And so I made sure my night ride was first, rode in the back on Raven. And I was just like, okay, John was right. The wood coasters are awesome. And a good wood coaster is, way better than a steel coaster can be. So
Yeah.
obviously, since the late 90s, wood coasters and steel coasters have upped their game seriously, so it's a good time to be right now riding. But that really changed my life and perspective. I was hoping to work at Arrow or another steel coaster company up until that point, and then on the way back I looked up custom coasters and drove by the custom coasters headquarters just to kind of get a feel for what it looked like. And just a couple of years later, I started working for them. So it was definitely a dream come true for that part of my little world. But just the whole, growing up at Cedar Point with wood coasters was just not a good, we were always told it's the best amusement park in the world, right? So why go elsewhere?
Right.
You
Right.
know? And the more you go, the more you experience the difference. You get away from the better. You just get to have more variety of experiences, and
Absolutely.
definitely encourage people to get out of Northern Ohio and
Yeah.
experience other stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Absolutely.
like Carson and I are going to Dollywood next week for CoasterCon. I know that's not a Cedar Fair park for the
Mhm.
purpose of our podcast, but I'm so excited to go to Dollywood for totally different reasons than I am excited every time I go to Cedar Point. It's
Yep.
like you said, it's a different experience, and each park brings a different thing to the table, and that's what keeps everything so interesting and keeps us going back to all these parks over and over and over.
Yep. Yeah, Dollywood's a really special park. We've had some really great times there, and it's only 4 hours away from here in Cincinnati, or 4.5. So
Sure,
it's,
brag some more.
more of a day trip. So I'm a lot farther away from Waldameer than you guys are. So that's
Oh yeah. That's true.
and also Kennywood. So
Man, we got you.
oh, that's right. Kentucky Kingdom, Holiday World. Yeah, those are both day trips for us.
Oh man, if I had Holiday World as a day trip, that would be dangerous.
Yeah,
Right.
we actually make that day trip a lot.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Oh, Gosh.
And it's always like, when the parks aren't operating for some reason. So
Right.
All right, so we kind of touched on this earlier, but do you have we just asked about, what your favorite project you worked on was. Do you have a most challenging project you worked on, either being, building, designing, whatever?
Yeah, a couple things come to mind. The first one was a non-gravity group ride, the Custom Coasters Lost Coaster of Superstition Mountain at Indian Beach. We had about 6 months to do that project, and we had a old dark ride, and the structure was fixed. There was a little bit we could do with it, but it had 3 levels, and they wanted to convert it from a electric powered dark ride that went inside and outside. That has challenges as well, and they wanted to make it gravity powered. So, we put our heads together, and it was a really challenging thing. So we ended up, coming up with a bunch of firsts for wood coasters. We had the Lost Coaster cars, which were just really bizarre. They could go around at 6-foot radius. The vertical lift was certainly a unique thing. And then we also had the first application of magnetic brakes for a wood coaster. We had, if you've been on the ride, there's a section of the ride that goes through this rotating barrel. And what we had is we were going from one story down to the next story right into the barrel. And we just had to trim off some energy. We just had way too much energy to hit the curve right after that. So we worked with a company out of the UK to develop some basically magnetic or horizontal magnetic brakes. And so all that was like 6 months. I don't really know how we did it.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It was pretty insane. So that was a huge challenge. I'd say the other biggest challenge was the Timberliner cars. I have a passion for wood coaster cars, and also coaster cars in general. I'm a big study of all the stuff that's going out there, and I was the key engineer on it. But when you're doing a wood coaster train, it's just a different animal than a lot of the other products out there. So we learned a lot, and we're really happy with the results. But it was definitely a challenging project. Coming up with something completely from scratch, knowing that we didn't want an iterative design. We wanted something that said, okay, what is our inputs and what are our goals, and start with that from a design point of view. It wasn't like we'll just, grab this seat from here and grab this lap bar from here and grab these wheels from here.
Yeah.
We wanted a blank slate. So yeah, I'd say those are some of the most challenging projects. But yeah, all of our projects have some type of quirk to them. You got a 150-foot bridge up in Erie, Pennsylvania that we put a coaster over. And
Yeah.
You got all the stuff at Indian Beach was crazy, going out in the water and all that kind of jazz. And but yeah, it was I don't know. I'll just stop there. One of my other favorites, though, I got to say Kentucky Flyer was just one of the things that just kind of hit right, just from what I experienced, my time there doing testing and stuff, as well as, the family experience in that ride was just real special. And just having something that's, finally in the Midwest, by us, to have something that we can go out to and, be a lot more accessible than, Mount Olympus is a good 9 hours away from here. So, yeah.
Well, it's only 6 hours away from us. So
Yes, it is.
And it's probably like 25 away from me, so shut it.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And you guys are all younger, so you could do that in a day trip.
I mean,
no
we
thanks.
Yeah. Let's go.
I'm good.
All right. The last few questions we have are just your personal opinion. They don't have to involve Gravity Group or anything, just your opinion as a roller coaster fan. What is your favorite overall coaster? Wood, steel, whatever.
The one that makes me go wow the most is a Voyage.
Okay.
Okay.
A dark ride on Voyage. I haven't had a better coaster experience. I have soft spots for others. I know some people are like, this is my favorite ride, but this was my most thrilling ride, or this is my sentimental favorite. The Voyage is like that ride experience hasn't been topped in my riding. Put it out there. I don't get to ride as much as I used to, being when you're working on the stuff, you don't take as many trips as you get older and have family and stuff like that. It's refreshing. A lot of our team members are out on coaster trips right now, so I'm kind of vicariously still living through them on their journeys. But yeah, I would say the Voyage is still the best ride that I've had.
Awesome. Cool.
Who is your favorite manufacturer?
That's
not named Gravity Group.
Yeah.
I mean, if Gravity Group is your answer, that's awesome. But
I'm gonna give a couple answers.
Okay.
Because I think, as a fan of the history, I feel like the coolest looking trains are the National Amusement Devices, or NAD Century Flyers, running on Kennywood's Thunderbolt and Camden Park's Big Dipper.
Yeah.
I just think that style is just really cool. And then also the PTCs that ran on Forest Park Highlands Comet has this big long nose, similar to Willow. I want to say Willow Glen. Somebody correct me on that. Over in Pennsylvania.
Williams Grove.
No, not Williams Grove.
No?
No, this was on the Alps coaster. That was at.
We might have to break our roller coaster database for this one.
Willow Grove. Yeah, Willow Grove.
Okay.
So
that's a new one for me.
It's a cool PTC train, but it's got this really cool snout on it with the light bulb up front, and
that's cool.
this real classic
Yeah.
train. So as far as modern coaster designers, manufacturers, I would say a soft spot for the new Vekoma stuff, but a nod to old school B&M. So
Okay.
And I preface that, and I talked to a lot of people that have ridden a lot of rides, and they make fun of me, but I think everybody's entitled to their own personal preference. And my favorite steel coaster is Apollo's Chariot for steel coasters.
Well, that's a good one.
Okay.
I have no problem with that. I love that ride.
Great old school airtime. It's not trying too hard. It's just got a great storyline. It's got a lot of variety. Every hill's different. The setting's fantastic. Followed closely by the awkwardly awesome Phantom's Revenge.
Yes,
so
that's another good one.
Phantom's Revenge is just awesome.
I agree with you on
it.
Phantom's Revenge. That's one of my favorites.
That's another night rides. Oh my god.
I just feel like it was quirky and forced and just kind of beautiful in that odyssey. So
I'd love to hear just all the craziness that went into that project, going from Steel Phantom to Phantom's Revenge, because man.
Ooh. Right.
All right. So 2 more. Obviously, you are not going to be working on the reimagined Top Thrill Dragster, but
at least we don't think.
Yeah. And you know what? If you were, you wouldn't be able to tell us about it. But do you have any pipe dreams or just crazy ideas that you would want to see on that ride, just being heavily involved in the industry as you are?
I remember when it was being built, everyone was like, is that it? It was like, is this going to go up and come down? Like, what do you mean? We all hadn't seen something like that before. And so, everybody has their own ideas on where to extend it out to. And, with 420 feet of elevation to work with, that'd be one heck of a ride. You can just have a completely amazing ride tacked onto that. So specifically, I'm not sure what you do with that kind of energy. Obviously we're just putting in our brakes right now. But even 300 feet of energy with Millennium Force, it's how do you effectively use that well? You end up, with something it's just a short ride. And, for all the Millennium Force lovers out there, I still think that those big hills going out on the island are supposed to be airtime hills that should be delivering. Personal opinion.
Oh, come on. There's airtime on a hot summer day when it's running all day. There's airtime.
I'm just thinking of Millennium Force just stretched out as a wood coaster, them trying to figure out what to do with all that energy, like you said. That'd be insane.
Interestingly, you guys may not know this. I'm sure a lot of you guys don't know this. You actually burn more energy on a steel coaster than wood coasters. So
really?
A wood coaster height, say Son of Beast is 200 feet tall, maybe you could put 6,000 feet of track on that. If it was a steel coaster, it might be 4,500 feet of track or 5,000 feet of track.
Really?
And the reason for that is the urethane wheels, they absorb energy. where a steel
Okay.
wheel on a steel track does not absorb as much energy.
Wow.
So
Huh.
it's overall a different friction loss, and so from a designer point of view, you end up having a little bit more challenges from a wood coaster loss point of view, because typically the parks want height and don't want to pay for the amount of length and structure to dissipate all that energy. They kind of
Right.
want the kind of like the Cyclops at Mount Olympus philosophy, where you have um, the state, or not Mount Olympus, let's say Zeus. You have a 35 or 40-foot tall station, and you go up 100 feet, and then you have a short track relative to the amount of energy that could be had, and then you go up really high because you only lost a certain amount of energy. So yeah, that's always something that we deal with as designers. Is
Huh.
they often want to have more height, and with the advent of magnetic brakes, that's been really helpful because you can just hit your brake run a lot faster. Or you have something like Orion where you have your brake run is 150 feet in the air,
Yeah.
Yeah. Something.
and just because the ride is only so long,
Right.
and they wanted the 300 foot and didn't care about really maximizing the amount of potential energy, because it's expensive, and understandably so.
For sure. Cool.
All right. And then the last question that we always like to end with when we have someone on the show is, what advice would you give to any young aspiring engineers who might be trying to break into this industry?
As Evan's pointing at himself. I've been there. I have been in your shoes. I'm going to answer this. I'll probably give a little bit of a really long answer, because I'm going to kind of tell you how I kind of got into this whole thing. As in sixth grade, my brother and I were building all kinds of Lego creations. We loved just creating stuff, whether it was a lot of Lego or other products around the house. We were just building all kinds of stuff. And in sixth grade, somebody told me that a mechanical engineer is somebody who designs machines. And I'm like, number one, you could do that for a living and make money. And number two, what else would I want to do? Like, everything else sounds really boring compared to that. And it was kind of through that time, my brother and I and friends, we started building all kinds of different amusement rides out of Lego, sky rides, scramblers, you name it, water rides. We took bricks and made these little, Thunder Canyon style rafts out of Lego with styrofoam. And but we were on. So I'd been to Cedar Point a few times. I got a cool Cedar Point story too. I gotta share on the CP Rundown podcast. But we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Don't let me forget. We were actually at the irony of Cedar Point Park. We took this epic, like, National Lampoon style summer vacation. We took this road trip. We took a short jaunt from Ohio down to Texas, picked up my uncle. We headed out. We hit a bunch of sites on the way down and the way out to California. Visited my friends, or my cousins, and my uncle and aunt in LA. And we were going to go to Disneyland because my dad had always wanted us to, take a trip to Disneyland. I was in junior high or high school right at that summer. And my cousins were like, "We're not going to Disneyland. Like, that's for kids. We're going to Six Flags." And we're like, "Okay, that sounds fine." So I had known about Magic Mountain a little bit, but not too much. I wasn't really too much as too into coasters that as much. So this is a perfect opportunity to say how old I am. We saw ads for their new ride on TV, and it was the Viper. And they were like, "This ride is unbelievable. Like, there wasn't anything like it." And so, the next day we went to Magic Mountain and I rode Viper, and it was just like, wait, this is a machine. Somebody's designing this machine. I want that person to be me. And so, once we got home from vacation, I was just like, I gotta build, I gotta create, I gotta have some type of tactile understanding of the roller coaster. And so I started building roller coaster models. And so ended up building 3. The first one was called the Scarlet Fever. It was very similar to the Magnum. Lego cars. I literally went down to the hardware store. This you got to remember. There's no connects. There's no coaster dynamics. It was there was a few. As I learned as I got into it, there's a few model coaster articles in some of the American Coaster Enthusiast publications over the years. And so there was just a very few of us. Chris Gray was one of those. He's at Skyline now. And, John Blakemore had done some toothpick models, which were just unbelievable. And so there's a couple other people I started getting in contact with. But yeah, I had gone down to the hardware store. I said, what can I make a coaster model out of? And so I got some
guy looked
dowels
at you like,
yeah. I remember going over to a friend of mine's house and borrowing his table saw because I was taking some 1x2, which is 3/4 inch by 1.5 inch wood, and cutting into really thin square pieces that were like about 3/8 or 1/4 inch. And I was making this Magnum style structure out of that. And so
that's so cool.
So yeah, it was just fine stuff to do. And so then after the first one, I learned a lot about plastics and stuff, and I ended up making the second one, which is a Aero inspired looping coaster, very similar to Viper as well as Vortex down here at Kings Island. Called that the Black Plague. You can look that up on YouTube. It's out there. But all of my stuff was functional. Like if it didn't work, I just wasn't interested in it. So I had all these ball bearings, and it was a pretty cool, I think, product.
Sounds like I needed to be best friends with you when you were growing up. That would have been fun.
Right.
Yeah, this is all built in Elyria, Ohio.
Oh man, that would have been cool.
What did you say the name of the? I'm pulling it up so I can watch it after we're done here. What did you say?
Black Plague.
The Black Plague. All right.
Which is funny because my daughter just did a little school project about the Black Plague doctor this year. It's really ironic. So yeah, the Black Plague. I ended up selling that ride. This is a massive ride, by the way. It's like 10 foot by 16 foot by 7 foot tall. So it's no joke as far as a wood coaster or a model coaster. I ended up selling it to the Ontario Science Center. And this was like 6 years later, as I was partway through college at the time, and it was helpful. That's what helped me get through college. Was the selling of that was pretty helpful. It wasn't a lot, don't worry. Like it's not a money making thing. So
well, there goes that idea.
Yeah. So as I was finishing that, I was contacted by an ice cream shop out in Grand Junction, Colorado. And they were putting together an ice cream shop. They wanted something to kind of set them apart. It was a little bit different. And they wanted a roller coaster model that hung from their ceiling. And so I was like, okay, that sounds like a fun challenge. So I actually scaled everything up. This was about 12 foot by 25 foot model. And it was about 6 foot drop from the ceiling. And so I had to kind of think about everything weird because the tallest supports were at the end of the ride. There's also a video of that on, if you can do a search for that. Soda Jack's Ice Screamer was the final name of their
Jack's Ice Screamer.
Cute. Yeah. I found the Black Plague. I did find that.
Yeah, it's aged. It's very aged, but I don't know. I'd watch it.
I'm blown away. This is insane that this was built in your home.
Sorry, yeah, that was in the late 90s. Yep.
That's so cool. Anyway, sorry.
So yeah, then, but it was about, or like as I was building the Ice Screamer, I was applying to coaster companies. As I was getting into American Coaster Enthusiast and Great Ohio Coaster Club in the 90s, I was like, oh man, I want to be a coaster designer. And they're like, hold your horses, buddy. Because, I had heard, there's a better chance being an astronaut than a coaster designer. My colleague Corey had been told, don't try it, just don't pursue it. There's too few spots. There's too many people applying for those. Just don't even bother. But I was pushing, and I realized that I needed something that kind of made me, kind of different, or what separated me from the next guy. And I kind of felt, I was like, oh, well, let me push my models, and because I'm really, kind of doing a lot of the engineering and design already. And I can, the Soda Jack's ice creamer train was like a fully machined train out of aluminum and plastic and stuff like that. So I, was, plenty confident with my manufacturing skills, not as good as a lot of other people, but I could make stuff happen.
Mhm.
So I was hoping that would be attractive. And as I mentioned, Custom Coasters was my first choice for a coaster designing company. However, I actually applied to a marketing company called Intrax. Intrax did some animations for Cedar Fair. They did the Sun Beast video that's also kind of dated, and some other stuff for I think they did some stuff for Cedar Point. They were out of Mansfield, so I was like, you know what, that's a little closer to home. And I had been doing some renderings and animations and stuff like that with the models as well. When I was at college, I didn't have the model with me, so I was learning a lot about CAD and 3D Studio R4 before Max even came out. So, but yeah, it was fun. So I was just trying to, learn about everything. I had this super fortunate experience. So when my coaster model was up at Ontario Science Center, they asked me to come up and do a couple like presentation days and Q&As and stuff like that. And there was two key people that were also asked different weekends. One of the guys was Robert Cartmel. He's one of the early Ace authors that did The Incredible Scream Machine, still like one of the best coaster books out there. And he had some footage of the Mach Chunk Railway that he showed in his presentation. And it was just like, it's just really special spending some time with him. And the second guy was Ron Toomer. So Ron had retired from Aero, but he was still kind of doing, little gigs. So he was up there with his wife, and I was able to have lunch with them, and I was just blown away. I'm just like, this is really cool. And I had fully expected him to say that I should stop trying, and he didn't. So I was like, I guess he sees this huge, ride that's inspired by his work.
Yeah.
That he probably doesn't want to, crush my dreams or something.
Yeah.
So, and then, let's see. So then I, get hired at Custom Coasters after applying there. I didn't think I would become a coaster designer. I really didn't. I was, they say have a plan B. I recommend having a plan B. Make sure you have other interests. My other interests were in aerospace. I loved anything having to do with aviation and, airplanes and helicopters and stuff like that. My co-op experience was up in Elyria at aerospace pump company, and I was really fortunate to have that, like 5 minutes from my parents' house, so I could work on the coaster and do the co-op. So, I really, that's a great time to be in aviation engineering or aerospace engineering, depending on how you say it. So that was when the F-22 and the F-35 were, first flights of the first prototypes were going on, and it was pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
And I was just a little peon, but it was cool to be a part of that team. But yeah, everyone knew my, I was always the roller coaster guy, just like probably all of you guys and gals. So where was I going with that? So when I got to Custom Coasters, it was kind of funny because they're like, we just hired this really weird guy. Like, who's going to sit by the weird guy? And so I'm honored to be that person, but they thought I was pretty weird, and I was fine with that. So yeah, I feel really blessed that I was chosen for that position, and I sent him. This also dates me. I sent my resume on a CD with all the renderings and animations and stuff like that of my of my work. So. I was hoping that they had enough technical knowledge to, pull it in and, watch it and stuff.
Right,
so,
right.
But yeah, I would, the recommendation I would have, I feel like all I was doing is talking about myself, but the recommendation I have is make your own path. Don't try to, force somebody else's path. Don't force my path on yours. But, kind of, they say follow your passion, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, definitely do that. I think what I find, oh, there's a kitty cat.
I knew she'd come eventually.
Yeah. So
She's
what
so
I've found, and I see a lot of this in the industry, is people come in and they're like, I want to do ride layouts. Like, that's what I want to do. That's what the roller coaster engineer does. And yes, that is true. That is what a roller coaster engineer does. That is about 1% to 2% of a roller coaster engineer's job. So if that's all you want to do, just stick it as a hobby, and or just keep it as a hobby and no limits. You're going to just find a lot more enjoyment out of that.
Okay.
If you want to be a part of the team, and as one of my business partner, Larry Bill, likes to say, there's a lot of dishwashing in the job. You're going to be wearing a lot of hats. You're going to be back in his day, they used to use the phrase "lay the lead." So when you're drafting, with manual pencils, they're like, just, lay as much lead as possible, like just create bulk amount of drawings. And so, when we're doing rides, we're making, 500 to 1,000 drawings for each ride. And so it can be tedious, everything from the structure to the trains to, even all the, quality control and assembly procedures and stuff like that for all of our trains and mechanical products and things like that we do, all the drawings for the track. It's a huge amount of work that, you end up being a part of the team in a lot of different ways. That's just our company. And then we work with a lot of like park planners and artists and architects and things like that that are also part of the team. And, I thought I would mostly enjoy the ride layouts, which I really do. But, where I really geek out is in the cars and the mechanical systems, going back to 6th grade mechanical engineer. It's like, I just love how all these different things work together. And, there's so much innovation that we're doing, and that R&D is, certainly part that I get really excited about. Also, in engineering school, you learn a lot about programming, and however you do a task, if you can automate it, that's a huge deal. You're always trying to, you're trying to work smarter, and you're like, what, I've done this 20 times the same way. Is there a way to automate this? Whether it's, drafting this or doing that. So always kind of keeping that in mind too. So I love tinkering with the programming side of things as well. And, some people out there, you're learning, all the different languages, and a lot of those languages apply to, process improvements or just ways to optimize doing stuff. If you look at a wood coaster, the number of pieces on a wood coaster is pretty staggering. And pretty much every piece has some type of drawing. So that gives you an idea on the amount of effort that we have, as far as creating drawings. And the more you can automate that, the better off everybody is. So yeah, it's kind of like, okay, you have coaster designer, but there's so much more engineering involved with the rides, all the support. There's also, which I think is really cool, is a lot of our suppliers, they actually work for a number of different manufacturers and parks, and they get to work on some really cool projects that, might be even cooler than where I'm at, and so just the variety of products projects that you get to work on, seek those out too, because those are some really killer jobs that, if you're looking for satisfaction and being able to, be a part of a lot of projects, that's a pretty cool way to do that. Whether it's suppliers for parks, for, or even, Disney, Universal. Obviously, Universal and Disney have a lot of engineers that they hire as well. So, getting some internships at either manufacturers or at Universal and Disney, that's fantastic experience that we would be looking for. We're also looking for experience outside the industry. I feel like we can learn a lot in our amusement industry, from automotive, aerospace, you name it, any type of manufacturing. There's a lot of reinventing of the wheel that we don't have to do if we can learn from other industries. And then also, the park operations and understanding how parks work is a big deal. Brian Kosmak is one of our chief engineers, and he spent he's gonna kill me. I don't remember. Probably around 15 years he spent at Kings Island in operations, and so he was getting up there in middle management, and we had talked to him over the years. He had helped us out on various things over there, and kind of got to the point where he was wanting to get out of working every holiday and every weekend, and working in something that his degree was in. And so
Right.
he had actually just finished up his master's in engineering at University of Cincinnati. He went to University of Dayton as his undergrad, but he finished that up, and it was like, okay, now's the time to maybe switch over to engineering. And so we were able to hire him, and he's been fantastic for us. He has a huge passion for wood coasters. He's one of our key guys as far as going and looking at and measuring, surveying, scanning existing rides. He's been the chief project on the Beast as well as on Grizzly. So but yeah, just having that experience. Also from a civil engineering point of view, I didn't really touch on that, but the structural and concrete design, all that kind of stuff is very important, for our team. You might be interested more in the control side of things. You might have seen Jared Holliday's project that he did for University of Cincinnati. He had a fully working model coaster that had a control system and everything like that for a senior project. So, he loved the idea of that part of the project. He's working for Universal now. We would have picked him up in a heartbeat if we were, if we had that in our, if that was something that we do. We outsource all of our controls. So the control side of things, it kind of goes on and on. You're just kind of figure out, sorry if you're really into chemicals. I don't have a great, chemical engineering or chemistry thing, but maybe, you could be part of the Dippin' Dots or, something like that kind of thing. So help us out in that regard. So, but yeah, there's a lot of jobs in the industry that, don't limit yourself. Kind of find out, you might be more of an artist. You want to get into, ride logo design or concepts. Down in Cincinnati, we have 3 different companies that all have a history from the King's Entertainment days. International Theme Park Services, Dennis Spiegel and his crew, they do park planning all over the world. And, they're the ones who are telling the parks, be like, no, you got to have your queue over here, or you're interacting with, this thing over here. And we want to make sure that the ride is, really fits in well with this environment. And then you also have BDR Design, or Bruce D. Robinson Design Group. They did all the, or I shouldn't say all of them. As far as I know, they did a huge amount of the Wild Mouse area up at Cedar Point this year. So a lot of that signage all came from Southern Ohio. As far as the design goes, I'm not actually sure who manufactures that, but there is a company down here, 3DX Scenic. Mark Rosenzweig works over there. And they do a lot of the theming design. They did a lot of the floats for Cedar Point as well as Kings Island.
Ooh.
So there's so much that you just keep learning about that are really awesome. Like if you're an artist, you're a painter, you're a sculptor, there's a place for you in the industry. Like, there's definite, you don't have to be a mechanical engineer to be in the industry by any means. All the accounting and all that kind of stuff too. There's plenty of opportunities to join passions. I think is probably maybe what I'm kind of getting at, is if you have a passion for art and parks, put them together. There's plenty of opportunities. Whether it's graphic design, all the different park, I should say most parks have some type of sign department that are creating designs or designing new signs, all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to stop rambling about that. There's a space for everybody in the amusement park industry.
That just sounds like there's just a lot of paths, and you just broke that down instead of just saying, hey, go to college and put in an application. So I'm definitely, I was definitely intrigued by that. So that was
Well,
absolutely.
not only that, but even if you are an engineer, you got to be well-rounded. Um, it's crazy how much creative writing I do. Like, seriously. Like, I'm like, I never thought I would do this, but I'm trying to describe a ride to a potential customer and trying to make a composition about this ride experience and gotta stretch that muscle that hasn't been stretched for a little while. And so it's we have a lot of different talents on our team, and we find out what they haven't mentioned, because that might be one of the key things that we're like, oh, that's a great need that we have at our company. Let's utilize that talent that you didn't think you would have brought. So
yeah, for sure.
Cool. Very cool.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this week.
I got my story.
He's got a story.
Oh, no. Go ahead.
All right. So it's a Cedar Point story. My parents never really were into coasters. And so we didn't really go earlier. Once we kind of started going on our school trips, which, it's very different down here in Cincinnati. You don't like take too many school trips to Kings Island. It's just not as much of a thing. We're up there. It's like school trip, Kings Island or Cedar Point,
For sure.
3-4 times a year sometimes, or just school trips.
I took 3 different field trips to Cedar Point.
Yeah. Youth group trips. It's like, okay, whose youth group's going to Cedar Point? Let's, pile on. But yeah, season pass down here, it's like, let's see, what am I doing for dinner? Should I go home? I'm just going to go to Kings Island and pick up dinner. Like, that's reality down here. Like, I was like, go get some barbecue. It's like, that's fine. I'll take that on my way home. So that's the whole season pass contrast, like between Northern and Southern Ohio. It's like everybody down here has a season pass. It's like people that aren't coaster enthusiasts down here, everybody just has a season pass. It's just like you hang out there, like, you just have events there. Yeah. So, but before I was, this is, when I was 3 years old, I figured it out. We went to Cedar Point. My parents got tickets from somewhere. I had actually some old newspaper clippings from this era. It was like $6 to get in the park or something like that.
Wow.
And so
can you imagine that?
I sound really old. So I was 3 years old, and I didn't really remember anything about the park except for 2 things. One is we rode the mill race.
Okay.
The log flume was where Raptor is now, and that was a big thrilling drop for us as a family, and we just that was like one of the primary things we rode. I think that might have been the only thing we rode. We probably rode the train as well, but my parents were kind of like leery about coasters, and so I remember staring at this thing. I could have swore it was like 150, 200 feet tall. And I remember these single cars going around the curve and then dropping and going up to the other side. And I was just like, I don't know what that is, but that looks really dangerous and really tall. And I'm like, and then, I just kind of packed that memory in my head. Like 10 years later, I'm like, what ride was that? And I'm like, that would have had to have been the Wildcat.
Yeah. I was immediately like, Wildcat? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
it was
to your 3-year-old defense, it looks like it's still under construction, or at least it did.
Right. Yeah.
I remember the spindly structure and these big drops and these single cars. I think there's a chance it could have been the jumbo jet, but no, that wouldn't have been single cars. It would have been a train, if I'm not mistaken. But
I believe that was a train, maybe.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure
it was your database.
Yeah.
Now, if anybody has more information about the Scamper, hook me up, because that's like my
mom loved that ride. Or no, she didn't. She loved to watch that ride, I should say. She wasn't old enough to ride it.
Okay.
When it was still around, but what am I looking for? The jumbo jet. No, that was 2 cars per train. So yeah, it was definitely Wildcat.
Yeah. So yeah, that's
my research here.
That's my story. But we do still have or my parents, I'm pretty sure, still have a caricature from that day, and it was my 2 brothers and I. They're both older, And we had these matching outfits. I can't believe it. But we had these matching outfits. It was just like I don't know, it was like these red, white, and blue shirts and shorts, and yeah. And so it was awesome.
So you just blended in with Corkscrew. That's all it was.
Yeah, absolutely.
There
You were dressed for the occasion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is ironic because Corkscrew would have been there. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure why I was fascinated by Wildcat, but then in subsequent years, and maybe even that year, I remember going back into Frontier Town a little bit as well.
Yeah. There's so much history with the park, and it's just it's so fun. It's fun to reminisce with people that, I mean, I'm 23 years old. You know, the park that I grew up with is largely the same compared to the park my mom grew up with.
Right, where it's different. And
it's just so much more different, and it's so cool to hear all the different stories and stuff about the place I grew up at, and it's really awesome.
Yeah. Magnum, Mean Streak, and Raptor. That was like my era of growing up in high school and stuff. Wow. And I was so excited when we heard we were getting a Raptor, because I knew I'd seen the stuff about Batman in Chicago. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be the greatest thing ever, and it's still fantastic. So
it is.
I'm sure you probably learned about Raptor either maybe they were still like saying, hey, we're going to build this new coaster, or you learned about it probably in May and saying, hey, we got a brand new coaster, because there was no social media. There was no, there was just
kind of like, hey, guess what? We built a coaster.
Yeah.
I think I heard about it through Ace News, probably first. And then I had I believe it was a Plain Dealer picture of it when it opened. You know, it was right in the corks or the zero G roll area, and the whole thing flipping with the orange and the green and everything. It was just like, oh man, this is going to be amazing.
That was the first coaster con my mom ever did, was Raptor. Was the year Raptor opened.
That's just crazy to think, like you're just a normal
Coaster Mania, I'm sorry.
You're just a normal guest, and you don't know any of this stuff, and you literally visit the park, and then the next year you go back again and visit the park, say in June, and you're like, oh wow, what's this thing here? What the heck,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there was plenty of media coverage with a lot of that kind of stuff, but yeah, like you said, it's usually when the ride opens.
Yeah.
Now everything's, everybody can decode what's going on at this point in other parts of the world.
Yeah, for sure. Good stuff.
All right.
Yep. All right. I think that's going to wrap us up this week. Sorry, I couldn't get it. Thank you so much, Michael, for coming on the show this week. This was an amazing episode. And that's going to do it for season 1 of the Rundown on Fun. We're taking the next 2 weeks off for CoasterCon. That's all I got.
Yep. Yeah, just like Kyle said, season 1 has wrapped up with a heck of a finale. And thank you again to Michael. And we're off to CoasterCon next week, and we'll be back with season 2 after CoasterCon.
And make sure you follow us on all the social medias.
All right. That's going to do it. Take it away, Justin.
Thank you for listening to the Rundown on Fun. Be sure to follow us on social media to stay up to date on all things Cedar Fair. As always, be kind to your ride operators, and we will see you on the Midway. Good night.